Let's jump right in. Welcome to This Explainer, where today we are tackling a staggering 5,000 years of history. We're zeroing in on a single, incredibly dense square kilometer of Earth, a tiny patch of land that has literally sparked more devotion and, well, more destruction than almost anywhere else on the planet.
So let's start with a completely mind-boggling question. What city has changed hands no fewer than 40 times? 40! From a tiny little settlement clustered around a water spring to the absolute epicenter of global conflict and worship. We are, of course, talking about Jerusalem. It's a city carrying this immense, almost crushing historical weight, packing a chaotic and turbulent legacy right into a remarkably small geographic space.
To actually make sense of all this, here is our roadmap for the explainer today. First, the City of Three Faiths. Second, Rise of the Ayyubids. Third, the Battle of Hattin. Fourth, the 1187 Siege. And finally, empires to modern mandates.
All right, part one, the City of Three Faiths, a 5,000-year legacy of reverence and rivalry.
If we look back, we can trace this chaotic, constantly shifting cycle of building, absolute destruction, and rebuilding. It all starts way back in 3000 BC with just a small Canaanite settlement around the Gihon Spring. Then, by 1000 BC, it becomes the capital of the Israeli kingdom under King David and King Solomon, who you'll remember built the first great temple. But stability never really lasts long here. In 587 BC, the Babylonian conquest completely destroys the temple and exiles the inhabitants. Fast forward through centuries of Greek and semi-autonomous rule, and boom, we hit 70 CE. The Roman legions brutally suppress a revolt and destroy the Second Temple. Skipping ahead again to 638 CE, the city is captured by the Islamic Caliphate. When you look at this relentless cycle, you realize this isn't just history, right? It's a deep psychological layering of collective memory from multiple civilizations.
And honestly, that layering perfectly explains exactly why this single location is so fiercely contested. The spiritual stakes here are absolute. For Judaism, the Western Wall is the surviving remnant of the Second Temple, making it the holiest site of Jewish worship. For Christianity, you have the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which marks the accepted site of the crucifixion and burial of Jesus Christ. And for Islam, the Temple Mount houses the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, revered as the exact site of the Prophet Muhammad's ascension to heaven. So just imagine the immense spiritual gravity of three major global faiths converging on one tiny geographic footprint. It perfectly sets the stage for the intense medieval conflicts we are about to dive into.
Moving on to part two, Rise of the Ayyubids, the ascent of Saladin in a fractured Middle East.
This brings us to a truly fascinating figure, Yusuf ibn Ayyub, immortalized in history as Saladin, which translates to the righteous of the faith. Interestingly enough, he was actually an outsider. He was a Kurdish soldier born in Tikrit in 1137, whose family served the Seljuk Turks. He rose to prominence over in Egypt alongside his uncle, eventually becoming the minister of Egypt. Now, his real superpower? Extreme meritocracy in an era that was absolutely obsessed with bloodlines. He surrounded himself with highly capable, completely loyal advisors, regardless of their ethnicity. Throughout the late 1170s and 1180s, he patiently consolidated his power, captured Damascus, and unified these disparate Muslim factions under his newly founded Ayyubid dynasty. His ultimate bargain with these unified leaders was pretty straightforward: accept his role, and he would defeat the Crusader states and reclaim Jerusalem.
Which leads us to part three, the Battle of Hattin, the pivotal clash that broke the Crusader armies.
Okay, so the uneasy truce between Saladin and the Crusader states was completely shattered by a treacherous Crusader lord named Reynald of Chatillon, who just kept attacking Muslim caravans. Well, Saladin retaliated with stunning brutality in July of 1187. Let's walk through his tactical masterclass here. Step 1. Lure them out. He lays siege to Tiberias, deliberately drawing the Crusaders out of their strongholds and into a grueling 32-kilometer march across a sun-baked arid plateau. Step 2. Cut the water. His mounted archers harassed them endlessly while completely severing all access to water supplies. The Crusaders were literally dying of thirst. Step 3. Turn up the heat. On the morning of July 4th, Saladin ordered his men to set fire to the dry grass and brush surrounding the Crusaders, just suffocating them with intense heat and smoke. By step 4, it was a total massacre at the Horns of Hattin. With the Christian infantry breaking formation in sheer desperation, Saladin's cavalry encircled and annihilated the exhausted forces, even capturing their holiest relic, the True Cross.
In the immediate aftermath, the captive king of Jerusalem, Guy of Lusignan, and that treacherous lord, Reynald of Chatillon, are brought right into Saladin's palatial tent.
Saladin offers the terrified, thirsty king guy a glass of iced julep covered in mountain snow. Now, this is a profound gesture, because in Muslim culture, offering sustenance means the captive is officially safe. But when King Guy hands the cup to Reynold, Saladin snaps. He did not give permission for Reynold to drink. After berating Reynold for breaking truces and slaughtering innocents, Saladin draws his sword and executes him right then and there. Turning back to a trembling King Guy, Saladin delivers what has to be one of history's absolute coldest lines: "Kings do not kill kings." He spared the king, forever cementing a legendary reputation for this incredibly unique blend of absolute ruthlessness and chivalry.
Part 4. The 1187 Siege, the fight for the Holy City. So, with the Crusader field army basically wiped out, Saladin rapidly swept through Palestine and marched directly on a nearly undefended Jerusalem with an army of 20,000 men. Inside the city walls, the defense was hastily scratched together by a Crusader noble named Balian of Ibelin. He was forced to knight squires and arm local tradesmen just to have enough bodies to man the walls. Eventually, Saladin engineers tunneled under the defenses and collapsed a section near the Mount of Olives. Knowing the city was inevitably going to fall, Balian went out to negotiate. Initially, Saladin refused terms. He correctly pointed out that resisting cities typically get sacked, which, by the way, is exactly what the Crusaders had done 88 years prior. But then, Balian issued a terrifying ultimatum. It was essentially a 12th century version of mutually assured destruction. Balian said, "If you breach the city by force, we will slaughter the thousands of Muslim residents trapped inside, and we will completely level the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque." Faced with this desperate threat of mutual destruction, not to mention the potential loss of Islam's most sacred shrines, Saladin calculated the risk and actually agreed to a peaceful surrender. The final negotiations centered heavily around ransoms. The Crusaders scraped together 30,000 bezants to pay for 7,000 Christian citizens. But here's the thing: Saladin didn't stop at a purely transactional ransom. Demonstrating the immense generosity that made him such a legend, he eventually persuaded his own officers to free thousands of other Christian captives who simply couldn't afford to pay. And on top of that, he also freed 3,000 enslaved Muslim prisoners of war. Really take a second to look at the stark contrast between these two conquests. In 1099, the First Crusade breached the walls and unleashed an absolute massacre upon the city's Muslim and Jewish inhabitants, spiritually polluting the Islamic shrines by physically converting them into churches and palaces. Yet just 88 years later, in 1187, Saladin orchestrates a virtually bloodless handover. Innocent lives are entirely spared, ransom agreements are strictly honored, and Muslim clerics simply purify the Temple Mount with incense and rosewater. This juxtaposition perfectly captures exactly why Saladin is still revered across both Christian and Islamic histories as a genuinely honorable conqueror.
And that brings us to Part 5, Empires to Modern Mandates, a new era of shifting powers.
Saladin's massive victory immediately sparked the Third Crusade, bringing Europe's kings, most famously Richard the Lionheart, into a bloody stalemate in the Holy Land. From there, the merry-go-round of empires just spins even faster, really showing us how temporary control truly is in this region. By 1291, the Islamic Mamluk Sultanate drives the last Crusaders out entirely. Then, in 1516, the Ottoman Empire takes over, and they rule Jerusalem for exactly 400 years. As the Ottoman Empire eventually collapses during World War I, British forces capture the city in 1917, bringing it under a British mandate. All of this unrelenting change totally sets the stage for the monumental shifts we see in the mid-20th century.
Which brings us right up to the volatile modern era. In 1947, attempting to manage the competing claims from rapidly growing Arab and Jewish populations, a UN partition plan to make Jerusalem an international neutral zone ultimately failed. Following the British withdrawal in 1948 and the formal declaration of the State of Israel, the Arab-Israeli War broke out. The direct result of this bitter fighting was the physical division of the city among the combatants. The western half of the city became part of Israel, while the eastern half, which, crucially, included the historically and religiously dense Old City, was occupied by Jordan. This division firmly entrenched the very geopolitical realities that continue to shape our world today. So, after 5,000 years of shifting borders and relentless conquest, we are left with a pretty profound question. Can a city claimed by so many ever truly belong to just one? From Canaanites to Israelites, Romans to Crusaders, Ayyubids to modern nation-states, every single group has left an indelible mark on that one tiny square kilometer. I really hope this explainer has helped you understand how the heavy echoes of Jerusalem's history and towering figures like Saladin continue to resonate so loudly today. Thank you so much for learning with me. Until next time, stay curious.